Okay, awesome. Thank you. Now we have 4. Hey, Chris. Oh, you're okay. Don't worry about it. So you know what? I messaged Jerry and he has not messaged me back. I'm just trying to think. It's just Claude. It's online. Well, we do have enough. We just need 4 to be able to vote. Because 4 is majority. That's. So, I mean, Mino, if you would want to lead until Jerry comes, or if Jerry comes. Yes, we have Claude online.
Hey, Claude, would you mind helping with the invocation? Actually, Chris was. Oh, perfect. And Claude, Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, perfect. Yeah, we're set to go then. All right. Whenever Kelly, you and Nate are ready.
We are ready to go. You can start.
All right, welcome everybody. June 2021, Planning Commission. So I'm Mino Morgese, and want to welcome everybody here. And we're going to start today with invocation from Chris, and then pledge from Commissioner Claude.
Heavenly Father, we are very grateful for this beautiful day and that we can see our beautiful mountains. Please help us to think clearly and to be able to decide quickly on the things that would best help our city and our wonderful citizens and bless the lives of our families. We are so grateful to live where we do, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
All right, so items number 1, public appearance. Do we have anybody online?
No one online.
And that is perfect, there's no one here, so I'll close the public appearance and then start with the consent item. A, approve a meeting of May 25th. Did Commissioner get a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Any revision, or can we get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the 25th of May 2021.
I second it.
Okay, can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, the minutes are approved. So items number 3, public hearing, text amendment, parcel boundary adjustment, lot line adjustment, and plant amendment.
Okay,
Phil.
thank you, commissioners. Sorry, you were probably about to say my name. This is a request from staff to update the development code. regarding the parcel boundary adjustments, lot line adjustments, and plat amendments. There was a, with the Utah State legislative update, House Bill 409 was passed and was effective as of May 5th, 2021, so a little bit over a month ago. So we are doing what we need to update the development code to be compliant and consistent with the state code. And essentially what this does, it modifies property boundary adjustments, subdivision amendments, and public street vacations, which we'll go into in just a moment. We did add some definitions as clarifications for this section, which includes lots, like the definition of lot line adjustment, parcel boundary adjustment, and plat amendment. The reason for this is, in the staff report it explains, but just the difference between a lot line adjustment versus a parcel boundary adjustment. A lot or a lot line adjustment is an amendment to a recorded subdivision plat. And so if there is a lot in a subdivision plat, if it's even just moving a line, a plat needs to be recorded to amend that. You can only do, here I'll go through this. So with our current process for lot line adjustments and parcel boundary adjustments, there's an application with a $200 review fee, and it's just reviewed by staff, and we give approval, and then they can go to the county and record it along with a notice of approval, which just includes the new legal descriptions and our Highland City approval. And then for our plat amendments right now, we have an application with a $550 review fee, and we have to send out public hearing notices to a 500-foot radius around the subject property, and then a public hearing is held at City Council. And then when the City Council approves it, then it goes to the county. But now, basically, the only things that are allowed to be just reviewed by staff and go to the county without council approval is parcel boundary adjustments, so parcels that are not included in recorded subdivisions. And then for any adjustment to the subdivision plat, a new plat has to be recorded to record that plat amendment, and so it includes the application. And then for our proposed amendment, we are proposing that notices still be sent out just as a public meeting notice to the 500-foot radius, but a public hearing would not be required for the plat amendment unless one of these things happens, basically. And so we have that 500-foot radius that's sent out, and if any owner that's in the original subdivision plat sends us a written notice of objection, then we would hold a public hearing. So we would have to send out public hearing notices and do all the appropriate notices for a public hearing, and then put it on City Council, and so it would put it off a little bit if we received one of those objections. And then if not all owners in the revised plat have signed it, so if someone objects to signing the Mylar, then we'd have to go to a public hearing. And then if the petitioner request is a request to vacate some or all of a public street or any right-of-way, which just matches what we do now. If we have to vacate any right-of-way, it has to hold a public hearing. So it's just consistent with what's already being done and what's required by state code. And all the appropriate noticing was completed for this public hearing that we will hold, and we have received no correspondence. And we as staff just recommend that that the Planning Commission accept the findings that staff has found and recommend approval of the proposed amendment. Any questions that you may have?
Obviously, we're just aligning to the bill that was passed by the state. Do you know the background around that bill?
The background on the bill?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot that was in that
Okay.
bill.
Well, then I'll search it myself.
You know what? I did put the link to the bill in the staff report.
Perfect.
Just in case. I would suggest you do like the
Okay.
Control F and search plat amendment, just because there's a lot of stuff in there, obviously.
Okay.
And this was a fairly comprehensive land use update they went through and updated a lot of things about land use code,
Just in general.
just in general. I think there's a lack of clarity, or there was, regarding what happens if you have property that's in a subdivision, which is now a lot, and property that wasn't. And the code was unclear because you could use parcel or lot interchangeably, just refer to property. This is clarifying. Parcels are not recorded subdivisions. You know, if you just have an old meets and bounds where it's just a description, that's just a parcel. They have their own rules, and you don't have to go to the city for approval for most of those things. But once you get a recorded subdivision, I think just for record-keeping purposes, they're now saying those are lots. We want to make sure those are kept up to date with land records.
I move that the planning commission.
Oh, we need to
Oh.
open for
Oh,
public
the
hearing.
public hearing,
I'm
yes.
So I'll open for
I'm
public
sorry.
hearing.
That public.
We have no one online.
Okay, I'll close public hearing.
And I move that the planning commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the proposed amendment to several sections of the development code related to parcel boundary adjustments, lot line adjustments, and plat amendments.
All right, Claude?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Okay, thank you. So items number 4, public hearing, text amendment accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. This was a section included in House Bill 82 that was adopted. Again, it was adopted as part of the legislative update, but they did specify that the section about accessory dwelling units is not effective until October 1st, and so it was kind of giving municipalities time to regroup and amend anything that they needed to before it went into full effect. As part of this update or the proposed amendment, we did include the definition of accessory dwelling unit. This is the same definition verbatim that's already in Chapter 10 definitions, but I just wanted it to be here just to make it very clear what it was, because most residents just go directly to here and don't know that there's a definition that's in a different chapter for it. And then there's also a clarification in that same section just after the definition regarding short-term rentals, which are also known as Airbnbs. And in the municipal code, that section that or chapter 5.24 that it refers to in the municipal code, is a section regulating those short-term rentals and establishing that if they're 30 days or less, or if they're being subleased or rented out for 30 days or less, it does require a building, or oh my goodness, not a building, a business license. So it's just differentiating between the two. With an accessory dwelling unit, you have this set criteria that you need to follow, and you have to get this permitted. And if it's a short-term rental, this is what you need to do for that. As part of this proposed amendment, it does prohibit ADUs, accessory dwelling units, on lots less than 6,000 square feet. The state allowed us to have this as part of our code. It is voluntary. We don't need it in there. And the 6,000 square feet was the maximum. You can't limit it on anything larger than 6,000 square feet. We as staff thought it would be best to include it, mainly because of the higher density developments that we have coming into Highland, like Ridgeview and 10700 coming in right here, and Highland Vista that's being finished here, just to mitigate the traffic problems or higher density problems that we could possibly have in those areas. And most of those are less than 6,000 square feet, and just trying to mitigate that a little bit. And then another requirement, or goodness, in addition to the proposed amendment, is a minimum of 1 off-street parking space required. Our current code requires 2, but the state allows us to only require 1, and so that's addressing that.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I was told that for Airbnb units, they were not allowing any parking on the street, that we had to supply the parking for them. So that is not true?
For Airbnbs, So this is for ADUs,
Oh,
but
okay.
for people that are living there long-term,
That aren't?
that are.
Oh, that
So,
are living,
yes,
okay,
if you
gotcha.
have like tenants that are living there
I'm sorry, I
longer than
didn't see
30
the switch.
days.
Gotcha,
No,
gotcha.
it's like, and then it also just clarifies that we prohibit separate utility meters for the main dwelling and the ADU. They have to be on the same utility. And the appropriate notices were sent out for this public hearing that we'll hold, and we have received no correspondence. And we, as staff, just recommend that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed amendment.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So on R1, you know, we've got some of these weird R120, R130 legacy things. So those folks would still be permitted to have ADUs?
Yes, yes, ADUs are permitted in all three of those zones. The only thing that would prohibit would be the lots less than 6,000 square feet.
And just as another note, with, no? I thought disappeared. It was a good one, though, promise you. Oh, the building code was also updated. So previously for an ADU, you had to have a separate, basically an entire different HVAC system and double, fire breaks. They
Double
changed
sheetrock.
building code. This isn't, we don't have to amend our code to address it because it's state construction code, but basically they removed that and made ADUs an exception. So you can have an ADU without having to have a full, separate fire break area in your house.
Just trying to make it easier.
I think this is a part of the legislature's push to have more moderate income housing because it opens up a lot more apartment type places in historically single-family dwelling neighborhoods.
Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, then I would like to open for public hearing. Yes, it's still on.
Yeah, I do not have anyone online.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing and I'll get a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Section 3-624, accessory dwelling unit.
I second it.
Okay, Claude? Chris?
Yes?
Audrey?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
Oh, well.
Okay. All right, so items number 5, public hearing, text amendment conditional use update, and this is probably a follow-up from House Bill 409.
Thank you, commissioners. I will be presenting this one, and then we'll have another hour-long training for you all. Just kidding. I want to get out of here as soon as you, yes. This is another update, somewhat an overdue one. Conditional uses, we've talked about them before. Uses are kind of broken down in 3 categories within cities. You have just permitted uses where someone can say, I just want to do this on my property and it's allowed. There's prohibited ones where we say you can't do this on your property, so that's where you have like residential versus commercial. Then you have conditional uses where we say generally they're allowed, but we might have to take a second look at it to make sure there's no significant impacts to surrounding property owners or to the city as a whole. State law allows for conditional uses, but every year or every couple of years, legislature kind of tweaks it because cities handle them differently. So state law now says, as you see up there, we're allowed to have conditional uses, but they specified we can impose conditions in compliance with objective standards set forth in an applicable ordinance. So if we're going to impose conditions on someone who says, I want to do, I don't know if this is even allowed in Highland, but like a kennel, for example, and I want to house dogs. And we say, great, that's a conditional use in certain zones. They say, okay, what conditions are you going to pose on me? Before, it was kind of more loose, we think this is a good idea. And the legislature says, no, you need to specify what you can actually look at. What standards are you looking at? What factors are you looking at? So an applicant knows what they have to comply with. It's not just up to what you think sounds good. So this code amendment proposes a few things. We're eliminating the requirement to hold a public hearing for a conditional use permit. Conditional uses are administrative. They are we will approve, maybe we'll put some conditions on it, but it's generally a yes. And then we're adding in a list of factors and criteria that the Planning Commission and then the City Council can look at to determine what conditions can be imposed. And we make a clarification that if we don't have a specific standard, city has construction details and requirements. We don't cover everything, but we say we can look to an applicable federal, state, county, or an industry standard. But if it's not a generally acceptable standard, we can't just make something up and say you have to comply with this. So there's a lot of conditions regarding the use, the siting, safety, health, environmental concerns. So it requires the Planning Commission to do an initial review of the conditional use and review the factors, standards, the information we present, and then the Commission can recommend conditions to be put on it. You have to identify both the condition you're imposing and basically why you're imposing it. What harm are you mitigating with this? State law says we can't deny conditional use because they couldn't eliminate everything that was negative about the use. Basically, if they can come with some kind of reasonable mitigation, even if it's not a complete mitigation, we still have to allow it. So that is that. What's the next slide? This is a public hearing. We've gotten the notice. We have not received correspondence. And so there's proposed motion for you to review, but happy to answer any questions on that. It's quite a lengthy update, mostly because the city didn't really have standards before for conditional uses, so we're getting a little bit clearer on what we should be looking at. And the city council will also, when they go to approve it, they'll look at your recommendation, but they'll also have to specify why they're imposing conditions the same way I described before. It's quite a lengthy one, but if you have any questions, be happy to address it.
I was just going to ask, what happens if a citizen isn't aware that they need a conditional use permit and there is a complaint already established? What's our process in that, or do we get involved, or is that just with the staff?
Meaning if a citizens complain about the approval of it?
No, that it hasn't been approved because no one's requested a conditional use permit. Does that make sense?
Oh, like something's happening without a conditional use
Yes.
permit? That's a complaint that gets forwarded for enforcement. We can look at that and say,
I'm asking if we end up handling that, or if you guys end up handling that.
you might end up handling it on the back end if we come through and do an enforcement action and then say, this isn't really an allowed use, but it could be a conditional use. You'll have to go through the application.
Right.
You might get that kind of
Okay.
on the back end, but you won't get the front end enforcement of this is wrong to begin with.
So because we get a lot of letters that come through and they expect us to respond, so I'm wondering what our responsibility is in responding.
I would say forward it to staff for us to review and take a look at.
Yes,
and
Okay.
then-
with stuff like that, usually, I mean, obviously you have correspondence with residents, but if it's regarding something like that, maybe just forward it to us and we'll
Good.
talk to you about it, or let you know if you should respond or how to respond in that way.
Unless it's pertaining to a specific application, in which case,
Right.
bring that up and discuss that as part of the application review.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question related to, we have some sort of standard conditional uses that we see, but then you have ad hoc ones that we haven't seen yet and some that'll just pop out of nowhere. How do we go about crafting that objective set of standard and criteria, or is there already an existing list of things that we can use? I mean, does staff have a list already compiled of these 7 things or 3 things or 2 things?
So in large part, a lot of the basic things staff will handle as in terms of just, access and all of those things, staff will go through. This is trying to establish that list so we can go through and staff will take a first crack at it and work with the applicant and say, we don't think this is an issue, but, this looks like it could be an issue. What are you doing about, looks like you might have a ditch or some wetlands in there. How are you going to address that? And have them come back with something. And then staff can kind of say, we think you should look at this. And then the Planning Commission And now we have something in our code that says, planning commission, you're allowed to look at drainage and the siting of a building on it to make sure it's, so you can point to that. So now we're creating the list of things to look at. It'll, obviously staff takes a first crack, then you guys will have a chance to take a look at it, add or change, whatever you feel
Okay,
is
so our
appropriate.
blankie really as citizens is the skill, the technical expertise of the staff that'll say, hey, you might not have thought of this, but you've got, one of these 12 things that
Yeah.
might apply.
And sometimes you will get citizen comments. Generally, just people complaining about a conditional use isn't enough really to justify city action, but sometimes they'll say, they'll bring up code issues of, when I did this on a different project, I noticed I had to comply with this. What are you doing about that? And you say, that's a good consideration. When it points to code, that's a great factor to take into consideration. When it's just someone saying, I don't like this next to my house, it's like, we can appreciate that. And maybe we need to do some screening as our code allows if there's a significant noise or dust impact, but if there's not, that's not really a thing we can take into consideration.
Okay, any other comments? I'm guessing there's going to be also an appeal process that citizen can follow through.
Yep, so much like with a subdivision plat,
Yeah.
recommendation, council approves, a citizen or the applicant, if they don't like the conditions that are imposed on it, either side can appeal. I've had cases where both citizens and the applicant both appealed because one thought there weren't enough conditions, one thought there were too many conditions. So, but there is a full appeal process. It wouldn't come back really to you unless something really odd happened, but.
Okay, then I would like to open for public hearing. And I would like to close for public hearing. All right, could I have a motion, please?
Come on,
I move that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the proposed amendment to several sections in Chapter 4, Conditional Use Procedure in the Development Code.
I second that.
Okay, Audrey,
Yes.
Claude,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes?
and I'm a yes as well. And I think this was the last item for the agenda for tonight. So follow-up meeting, we have one scheduled for July 6th, which are we
That's
planning?
Cancel.
Oh, that's,
Cancel,
sorry, that's
yeah.
cancel. So there is cancel on the 6th, cancel on the 20th, and then planning commission on the 27th.
Yes, and that one will be a very exciting meeting full of a lot of items, so.
July 27th.
Yes.
Well,
July
it's
20th.
just
You're
a lot
joking,
of
or-
subdivision plat amendments, all that kind of stuff, so. I know I'm gonna have lots of fun. Y'all are gonna have more fun.
Is there any other opens for anyone? Then I would like to adjourn today's meeting. Could I have a motion?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.